Although President Trump and his advisors knew the risk of violence and specifically knew that the elements of the crowd were angry and some were armed from intelligence and law enforcement reports that morning, President Trump nevertheless went forward with the rally and then specifically instructed the crowd to march to the Capitol, knowing these people are armed. That's why I'm saying he specifically incited a violent insurrection. He knew that this would be a likely thing to happen. If you have hundreds to thousands of people who are armed and angry and think that the election was stolen to them because you've been force feeding them bullshit over Twitter for the past 2.5 months that, yes, the election was stolen with absolutely no proof. What do you think these people have weapons for? They're not just going to stand around. They're not just going to dilly-dally on the lawn of the Capitol and have a picnic. They're going to get wild, like you literally told them to. So that is why I'm saying that he incited a violent insurrection. That all of the things, it's not just one tweet or one action. It's the web of actions and speech that Trump weaved together before and on January 6th that incited the crowd of people, the mob, the Trump supporters, MAGA supporters, whatever, that Trump had spun around his finger to go towards the Capitol, to have the rally, knowing they're armed, knowing they're angry, telling them that it's going to be wild, telling them they have to take back their country. What the fuck did he think was going to happen? I think we knew exactly what he thought was going to happen. Although President Trump and his advisors knew the risk of violence and knew specifically the elements of the crowd were angry and some were armed from intelligence and law enforcement reports that morning, President went forward with the rally and specifically instructed the crowd to march to the Capitol. He says, quote, "Because you'll never have to take back our country with weakness." Or it's, quote, "Because you'll never take back our country with weakness." This is Trump saying this in his speech to these people, many of whom are armed. Quote, "Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated." Lawfully slated. And we're going to get into the elector fraud scheme with Mike Pence, his pressure on Mike Pence. But that is what Trump is talking about with that. President Trump's speech to the crowd that day lasted more than an hour. The speech walked through dozens of known falsehoods of purported election fraud. And Trump again made false and malicious claims about Dominion voting systems. Dominion voting system, it was like there's a whole lawsuit with Fox where Tucker Carlson and people on Fox News were saying that, the Dominion voting system was rigged and that had ties to Venezuela and like all this fraud. None of it ended up being true. Fox knew this was so, but they kept reporting it, which is why they had to pay a shit ton of money to Dominion. But that's what Trump is talking about. As discussed earlier, Trump again pressured Mike Pence to refuse to count the lawful electoral votes, going off script repeatedly and leading the crowd to falsely believe that Pence could and would alter the election outcome. Trump says, quote, "And I just spoke to Mike. I said, Mike, that doesn't take courage. What takes courage is to do nothing. That takes courage. And then we're stuck with a president who lost the election by a lot, and we have to live with that for 4 more years. We're not just going to let that happen. When you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules. So I hope Mike has the courage to do what he has to do. And I hope he doesn't listen to the rhinos, the Republicans, and the stupid people that he's listening to." So again, we will get into the whole Trump fake electors scheme with Mike Pence. But this is Trump, long story short, is pressuring Mike Pence to, instead of certifying the correct votes for Biden from certain states, he's essentially pressuring Mike Pence into accepting a false set of electoral votes that would make Trump president. That these votes have no backing, they are false, they are fraudulent, and he's telling Pence, like, no, accept these instead, because the VP is the one who presides over the certification of the election. He is the honorary presider of that, and so Trump's telling people and telling the crowd, like, Mike Pence, this is your job, this is your responsibility, do the right thing. And Trump wants the right thing is to accept these fake electoral slates. So the Capitol is now under siege. By 1:25 p.m., President Trump was informed that the Capitol was under attack. Minutes after arriving back at the White House, the president ran into a member of the White House staff and asked if they had watched his speech on television. Quote, "Sir, they cut it off because they're rioting down at the Capitol," the employee said. The president asked what they meant by that. Quote, "They're rioting down at the Capitol." I love how Trump's like, "What do you mean by that?" His advisor, the advisor's like, "Yeah, they're rioting down at the Capitol, sir." Oh, what do you mean by that? What's a riot, you say? And the guy's like, "Yeah, they're rioting down at the Capitol," the employee said. He repeats himself. "They're rioting down at the Capitol, Mr. President." "Oh, really?" the president asks. "All right, let's go see." Like almost like Julius Caesar just like sitting on his throne watching the gladiators. Like, "Oh, really? You say there's carnage down at the Capitol? Let's go observe. Bring me my faithful servant. Let's go see." A photograph taken by a White House photographer, the last one permitted until later that day, captures the moment that the president was made aware of the violent uprising at the Capitol. At 2:24 p.m., knowing the riot was underway and that Vice President Pence was at the Capitol, President Trump sent this tweet. "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what he should have done to protect our country." Again, certify these fake elector slates. "And our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth." Evidence shows that the 2:24 p.m. tweet immediately precipitated the further violence at the Capitol. Immediately after this tweet, the crowds both inside and outside of the Capitol building violently surged forward. People at the Capitol are plugged in to Donald Trump's Twitter. You can clearly see ebbs and flows based on the wildness, the rowdiness of the Capitol riots based on what Donald Trump is tweeting. When he says something, it happens almost instantly. When he says back off, it happens almost instantly. When he says go home, it happens almost. So like they're listening for calls from Donald Trump like their leader, like the crazy guy beaming shit down from the mothership. That is Trump through his Twitter to his loyal followers, his MAGA rioters. So evidence shows that 2:24 p.m., the tweet immediately precipitated further violence at the Capitol. Immediately after this tweet, the crowds both inside and outside of the Capitol building violently surged forward. Outside the building, within 10 minutes, thousands of voters overran the line on the west side of the Capitol that was being held by the Metropolitan Police Force's Civil Disturbance Unit, the first time in the history of DC Metro Police that such a security line had ever been broken. At 2:26 p.m., Vice President Pence was again moved to a different location. So again, President Trump is getting communication with what's going on the Capitol. He's seeing the chaos. He's seeing the attack. He's tuned in on live television. He knows that Mike Pence is inside the Capitol. He's gotten word that people are getting close to Mike Pence, that he's had to be moved multiple times. Trump has this knowledge as he is tweeting about Mike Pence, saying do the right thing. And also, tweeting, basically pressuring Pence, saying you need to do this. The people rioting at the Capitol that are, they're connected to Trump through the fucking the matrix of his Twitter. They know who Mike Pence is, and they're coming for him. So at 2:26 p.m., Vice President Mike Pence was again moved to a different location. President Trump had the TV on in the dining room. At 2:38 p.m., Fox News was showing a video clip of the chaos and attack with tear gas filling the air in the Capitol Rotunda. And a newscaster reported, "This is a very dangerous situation. This is the context in which Trump sent the tweet." Testimony obtained by the committee indicates that President Trump knew about the rioters' anger at Vice President Pence and indicated something to the effect that the vice president, quote unquote, deserves it. As Cassidy Hutchinson explained, quote, I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for Vice President to be fucking hung. And Mark had responded something to the effect of, you heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. Talking about Trump, saying he thinks Mike Pence deserves it for not going along with the fake elector scheme. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. To which Pat said something, this is fucking crazy. We need to be doing something more. Briefly stepped into Mark's office, and when Mark had said something to the effect of, he doesn't think they're doing anything wrong, knowing what I had heard briefly in the dining room, coupled with Pat discussing the hanging Mike Pence chants in the lobby of our office, and then Mark's response, I understood there, as in like they, to be the rioters in the Capitol that were chanting for the vice president to be hung. So Trump is hearing reports of this. He's seeing the footage on the TV. He's, the chants, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. People are coming to Trump saying you have to do more. His advisors, a lot of his inner circle saying, you have to call this off. Use your Twitter. Say something more directly about stopping being violent and going home. And Trump's just sitting there watching the TV almost maniacally like the Joker, just being like, yeah, fucking, let it burn. Let's see what fucking happens. Just like the image of Trump in a lazy boy chair, just legs crossed, sipping whiskey, smoking a cigar in the Oval Office, just watching rioters chant, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. And he turns to one of his advisors and says, they're not doing anything wrong. Them being the rioters. That's the scene that's going on right now. At 2:38 p.m., President Trump sent this tweet. Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. So he tweeted about Mike Pence at 2:24. Then for 14 minutes says nothing. And during this time, Mike Pence is being moved to different locations, under essentially in like a bunker under the Capitol. There's photos of Mike Pence you can look up that show him hiding with his family with Capitol Police under the Capitol, people searching for Mike Pence, people chanting, hang Mike Pence in the Capitol. Trump tweeting that Pence has betrayed the country and that, Pence failed to do the right thing. It's fucking insane right now. Like Mike Pence must have thought there was a decent chance that him and his family could have been killed on January 6th. And then Trump's response to all of that is he says, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Which is like a roundabout way of saying, fuck off, essentially. I'm not going to say shit about Mike Pence directly. Support the police. Like a really weird time to say support the police as he sees people on TV barreling through them and taking their riot gear and fucking using it to break open windows. To say to these people that are just like rabid inside the Capitol, like, hey, just remember to back the boys in blue. That's what I'm saying. Stay peaceful. You know what I mean? Weird time to send that message. At 3:13 p.m., President Trump sent another tweet, but again declined to tell people to go home. He says, quote, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. He literally just has to say, stop the violence, go the fuck home, stop, go home, stop, any variation of that. And he refuses. He refuses to say anything of the sort. Saying stay peaceful after hours, to 2 hours almost of watching the Capitol violence, stay peaceful. We're the party of law and order and respect. He's been watching this unfold with Mike Pence and his family in danger. Pretty indifferent tweet to the safety of Mike Pence and his family and other people inside the Capitol when you think about the current situation going on. President Trump could have done this. He could have told people to go home at any time after he learned of the violence of the Capitol. At 4:17, 187 minutes after finishing his speech, and even longer after the attack began, President Trump finally broadcast a video message in which he asked those attacking the Capitol to leave. He says, quote, this is Trump talking, "I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace." So Trump says nothing about, what you guys did was fucked up. I do not support it. I do not condone it. He actually says the opposite. He says we, like he's speaking with the rioters, with the people committing the violent insurrection, which he also has been doing on Twitter before that. And up to that moment, he's saying things like, we had the election stolen. We need to stop the steal. Essentially like drawing people in, like, I'm one of you. You're one of me. Let's fucking fight this shit together. Let's get wild at the Capitol. We will do this. He says, I know your pain. I know you're hurt. Almost like sympathizing with the people who became violent at the Capitol. At 6:27 p.m., President Trump retired to his residence for the night. As he did, he had one final comment to an employee who accompanied him to the residence. The one takeaway that the president expressed in that moment followed a horrific afternoon of violence and the worst attack on the U.S. Capitol building in over 2 centuries. He said this as his last statement, quote, "Mike Pence let me down. Mike Pence let me down." Reflecting on the president's conduct that day, Vice President Pence noted that President Trump, quote, "had made no effort to contact me in the midst of the rioting or any point afterward." He wrote that President Trump's, quote, "reckless words had endangered his family and all those serving at the Capitol." So Trump seeing these chants, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. He's tweeting about Mike Pence, saying that Mike Pence failed the country. He failed to go along with the elector scheme. He failed to stand up to election fraud, which is false. There was no election fraud, and the elector scheme was fake electorates that Mike Pence rightfully refused, like we're about to go into. And he knows him and his family are in a bunker under the Capitol at risk of their lives, and he continues to watch the riots for over 3 hours before he tells people to go home, but not before saying, "You're hurt and I feel your pain," pretty much saying, essentially like pat on the back, you did your job, go home. And imagine that is the guy who you worked alongside with for 4 fucking years. I cannot imagine the anger that Mike Pence had to hold back in the media, where he wanted to just tell Trump to go fuck himself and to suck his dick with all the shit that he did. Absolutely fucking despicable.